Hey everyone, and welcome back. You guys asked for it, so we're doing a deep dive into global tea and coffee culture today. And what's really interesting is that we're pulling from kind of an unexpected source this time.
Right.
A really popular podcast that's designed to help people get ready for the IELTS exam.
The International English Language Testing System.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a big one if you're trying to, move to an English-speaking country or study abroad.
For sure. And you know what's great is even if you're not planning to take the IELTS anytime soon,
Yeah.
the stuff they talk about in this podcast is like surprisingly insightful and useful.
Oh, totally. And today we're focusing on how tea and coffee, reveal cultural nuances, personal preferences, even global trends. It's kind of wild.
It is. And, we always talk about those big cultural trends. So this is a perfect fit for us.
Totally.
We're going to be looking at how these drinks are woven into daily life.
Right.
From, little personal rituals to, perceptions of coolness around the world.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Is coffee the cool kid on the block, or is it all about that sophisticated tea life?
Exactly.
Big questions.
And who knows, maybe we'll even uncover some hidden stories about, our own habits in the process.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
So the IELTS podcast kicks off with a seemingly basic question do you prefer tea or coffee?
Right.
And the hosts, they emphasize that even a simple question deserves a structured answer, especially in a test setting.
Yeah, they're big on that. You got to make a clear choice, explain your reasoning, and then add a personal touch, like a little story or a specific detail.
Exactly. It's all about being clear and engaging, even when you're just talking about your drink preference.
What I find really interesting is how this structure, it's not just good for exams.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a communication skill you can use anywhere.
Think about it. First impressions, job interviews, even just making a point, stick in a casual conversation.
Yeah.
If you can, articulate your thoughts in this way, it makes a difference.
Totally. And one of the hosts, Jake, he gives a great example.
Okay.
He says he loves coffee for the aroma and the energy boost, but he prefers herbal tea to unwind in the evening.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. And it seems like a small thing, but it tells you a lot about him.
It does. It's like a little window into his daily routine, his awareness of different tea types, and even how caffeine affects him. It's subtle but effective communication.
Yeah, for sure. So I got to ask, what about you? Do you have a go-to drink for different times of the day like Jake does?
Oh, for sure. I think most people do, right?
It really makes you wonder if our daily rituals with these drinks say more about us than we realize.
Oh, absolutely. It's they're not just beverages. They're woven into our lives, reflecting our needs and our preferences.
Totally. So the next question the IELTS podcast dives into is, when do you usually drink tea or coffee?
Okay.
And the other host, Hazel, she shares her routine. She says black coffee first thing in the morning for energy green tea, for a midday refresh, and chamomile to relax before bed.
I love that she's got a whole tea and coffee game plan.
Right. And what's interesting to me is the structure of her answer.
Okay. How so?
By outlining her day chronologically, she's kind of subtly showing us how deeply these drinks are part of her routine.
Oh, yeah. It's like a subconscious script. Almost wake up, coffee, afternoon slump, green tea, evening, wind down, chamomile.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because that assumption that certain drinks go at certain times of day speaks to a broader cultural understanding,
Right. Are those associations the same everywhere?
Exactly. Is green tea universally the midday pick-me-up?
Yeah.
Is chamomile the global relaxation drink? These are the big questions.
I love it.
And it makes you think, can seemingly personal preferences actually be connected to these larger cultural trends?
Totally. And that brings us to another fascinating point, the whole idea of the popularity of tea and coffee within a specific culture.
Right, because that can vary so much from place to place. So Jake from the IELTS podcast, he actually talks about this. He mentions that in his home country, they don't actually say where it is, but he says that tea is deeply rooted in their culture. But coffee shops are having this huge boom, especially among young professionals.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's this clash of tradition and trendiness.
It is, right? You have that long history of tea drinking with chai,
Yeah.
That spiced milk tea being a big part of social gatherings. But at the same time, you have this surge in coffee culture, which is often tied to that modern globalized lifestyle.
It's almost like what we were talking about before. You know how what you drink can be a way of expressing yourself?
Totally.
Maybe these young professionals are choosing coffee not just because they like the taste, but also because of what it says about them.
Right, like it signals their aspirations, their connection to this global community.
Exactly, even like their sophistication, you know?
It makes you wonder if similar things are happening in other parts of the world.
I'm sure they are.
Like you mentioned, you were interested in listener source related to a specific region. Are there any parallels to what Jake was describing? Like, is there a traditional beverage there that's kind of facing competition from a newer, trendier option?
That's a great question, and it really makes us think about like the cultural forces that shape our choices. You
Yeah.
know, it's not just about what we drink, but also why.
Speaking of why, the IELTS podcast hosts, they give these 3 golden rules for like really strong speaking answers.
Okay, I'm listening.
Expand on your ideas, use varied vocabulary, and keep a natural tone. And here's where it gets interesting. Those rules, they aren't just for test taking.
Right, they're good for communication in general.
Exactly. Like, think about job interviews, presentations, even just keeping a conversation going at a dinner party.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to express yourself clearly and like with personality makes a huge difference.
I think that idea of using varied vocabulary is so important. It's not about using big words just to sound smart.
Right.
It's about choosing the words that best express what you're trying to say.
And that natural tone is key too.
Oh, absolutely.
It helps you come across as genuine and relatable, which can make your message so much more impactful.
It's like you're having a conversation with someone instead of lecturing them.
Yeah.
And that's how you build connection and understanding.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about how our preferences can change over time.
All right.
Jake, from the podcast, he mentions that as a kid, he used to love sweet milky tea. But now as an adult, he's all about black coffee.
Yeah.
He says it's because his taste buds changed and he's more focused on health now.
That makes sense. Our tastes definitely evolve as we get older.
Right. And it's not just about our taste buds changing. It's about our values and priorities changing too.
And even our self-image. You know, like maybe
Yeah.
black coffee is seen as more adult or sophisticated.
Interesting point. Like, are there other drinks that have those kinds of cultural associations?
Probably tons. I'm sure we could spend a whole episode on that.
What about you? Have your drink preferences changed at all over time?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I know mine have. I used to be all about those sugary sodas as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm way more into like sparkling water or unsweetened tea.
It's funny how that happens. I wonder what caused that shift for you. Was it like a conscious choice to be healthier, or did your taste buds just change?
It's probably a mix of both, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think the people around us also have an influence. You know,
Truly.
like I noticed a lot of my friends were making similar choices, and I think that like subtly rubbed off on me.
It's wild how just talking about tea and coffee can bring up so many like insightful thoughts about culture and personal growth and even those subtle influences you were talking about.
Right. It's like these everyday choices, the things we don't even think about, like what we drink, they can actually tell a lot about who we are and where we fit in.
This deep dive has taken us on a journey, hasn't it?
It really has.
We started with an IELTS prep podcast and ended up talking about global trends, cultural stuff, personal stories, even a bit of psychology.
All because of tea and coffee.
Exactly. And now it's your turn, you know?
Take this new perspective and apply it to your own explorations.
Ooh, I like that.
Whatever you're diving into, whether it's market research or academic papers or just like looking at the world around you,
Yeah.
look for those little hints, those tiny choices people make, and ask yourself, like, what stories are they telling?
That's a great point.
Think about the drinks that are popular in the region or the industry you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any traditional drinks that are like super culturally important?
Right?
Are there new drinks coming in that are like challenging those traditions?
Ooh,
And what do those changes tell us about people's values and what they're striving for?
those are great questions to consider.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
let's leave you with one final thought to kind of chew on.
Okay.
Next time you see someone with their drink,
Mm-hmm.
don't just see the drink, see the story it tells.
I love that.
Is it a steaming cup of masala chai like shared with family and friends as part of a ritual? Or is it a fancy latte, enjoyed in a busy coffee shop as a way to connect to this global community?
Or maybe it's a simple mug of green tea enjoyed in a quiet moment representing like health and well-being.
Right. Every cut, every sip, it holds a story.
It really does.
What will your story be?